Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it is the 20th of July. That means I'm only 6 weeks out from a dove hunt and 8 weeks out from my first trip out west. I don't know about you, but I am ready. Now, the title sponsor of this show is one of the things that you're going to need on that trip. Especially, I'm just gonna paint this scenario. Let's say you are new to this and you just started listening to podcasts and you got your first dog and you've only hunted around your house or your basically your state. And let's just say you're one of those 11 people left that doesn't have Onyx on their phone. Okay, you're going to go to a training day or you're going to go to sporting clays range and you're going to bump into somebody. And bird hunters do this all the time. They'll share spots with you. I have been given plenty of spots from friends. It's not like deer hunting. We're not collecting antlers and points and I'm only going to shoot a 4.5-year-old pheasant. No, we're bird hunters. We're generous, and we love the fact that we're like the minority out there, right? Well, let's picture you're out there somewhere this summer. You're getting into it. You're planning some trips, or you want to plan a trip, and some perfectly genuine, trustworthy person that you don't know just says, well, pull up your Onyx. I'll send you a pin. Wouldn't you be embarrassed if you didn't have Onyx on your phone? I'd be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed for you. And you can get that on your phone with the promo code HTP20. That'll just sweeten the pie a little bit. Now, I'm not going to tell you that Onyx is the only mapping system out there. No, I'm not going to tell you that. Nor am I going to tell you that Gunner Kennels is the only transportation kennel out there. They are not. There's been kennels out there for years, been out there longer than them, but still when I put my dogs in. W Supply. Am I going to tell you that it's the only place you can buy something from? Of course not. You could find dog supply products, on Amazon, but I wouldn't go there for them. I'd go to W Supply where you talk to people who talk the talk. I'm not going to tell you Garmin is the only thing I put around my dog's neck, and most of my friends feel the same way. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you that's the reason why you should put it around. It's the most trusted name in tracking and training out there. No more than am I going to tell you Canine Athlete and Wilderness Athlete, the only products for you and your dogs. No, there's other companies out there, but Canine Athlete and Wilderness Athlete are the company. Shotguns, am I going to tell you there's only Mossberg shotguns out there? Of course not. Now, they've been around for 100 years. There's a gazillion of them out there. I'm not going to tell you it's the only shotgun out there. It's the only one you should consider when you're looking for, especially when you're looking, look sub-gauge. That's where you really start getting the value. Look at that Mossberg Silver Reserve sub-gauge, 28-gauge, 410 gauge. You're going to fall in love with that one. I'm not going to tell you that there's no other non-tox shells out there besides Boss. You'd call me a liar. You'd write me an email tonight and say, Ron, there's been plenty of non-tox stuff out there. It's the only one I would consider using. Right? Purina Pro Plan. Is it the only dog food on the market? No, of course it's not. It's the oldest one, and probably there's nothing that comes close to it as far as age and what they've done for everything from the sporting dog world to the show dog world to the environment, to habitat, the projects they work on. So I'm not going to tell you it's the only dog food. It's just the only dog food I would feed. Is Barshware the only low country, comfy, stretchy, cool? What's the other words I'm looking for? Give me some more adjectives. I wish I had a producer here. I should do ChatGPT on that one. That's a great idea. Well, here's what ChatGPT came up with. Athleisure, luxe casual, effortless, flexible, versatile, wearable, flowy, form-fitting. I don't think any of my stuff's flowy, and relax fit. I mean, it's all of those. It's Marshwear, okay? I'm not telling you it's the only clothing company out there. It's the only one I wear, okay? Arxis boots. Are they the only rubber boot out there? Well, these days that might be not fit into this whole thing. They are probably the only boot. I don't know. Maybe there's two other ones in the globe, and you can't get them here, that are real rubber boots that are going to last you for decades. So I'm not going to tell you that Arxis is the only boot for you. I'm just going to tell you it's the only good rubber boot for you. And I'm not going to tell you that you have to be a patron, okay? I am not going to tell you that. I think you should be a patron. I think you get a bigger discount on Marshwear. You get a bigger discount on K9 Athlete. You know, everyday listeners could get 25% off their first order with the promo code K9 Athlete. And everyday old Joe and Jane 12 gauge, they can get 15% off with HTP 15 off their Marshwear. That's not bad savings, but if you're a patron, you will save more money. That's all there is to it. A lot more money. So I'm not telling you that you have to have all these things. I'm telling you I wouldn't steer you wrong. What I am telling you, no, that'd be a lie. Watermark Brewery, is that the only brewery I like in Michigan? No. Is that the one that I love the most in Michigan? Yes, down in Stevensville, Michigan. They just had I think it was their 7th anniversary weekend opening, and they had remember the old bull ride? You know, where you got on the bull in the bar and the bull threw you off? They had a shark ride. It was a phenomenal. I couldn't get down there because of birthday parties and wash machines breaking and remodeling a laundry room. Anyway, I couldn't get down there, but I'll be down there this week to pick up another barrel of Leisure. Now, Leisure is a brand, but they've got Bodega. They've got if you're in the area, look for it in southwest Michigan, down there around Benton Harbor, that kind of area. Even if you don't have time to go to a brewery, pull into a gas station, pull into a liquor store. You will find Watermark beer down there. I just hope it spreads and spreads and spreads. And pretty soon I'll be the original podcast that had Watermark for a sponsor. Until then, I'm the only podcast that has Watermark for a sponsor. They keep me hydrated, just like K9 Athlete keeps my dogs hydrated. All right, that's it. That was simple. I'm sorry. That was only 6 minutes. Come on. Bear with me here. Oh, I should say, it's never 6 minutes, is it? American Field. I sometimes forget to say this. American Field, if you use the promo code Hunting Dog Podcast, you can get 20% off your first year subscription. Or if you went for a 2-year subscription, you'll save 30%. And another thing, I don't think of this time of year because I don't really train my dogs anymore, right? I mean, I train them to what I need them for, but I'm not getting ready for tests. I'm not getting ready for anything in particular. I'm not working on steadiness. But if that's not you, if you are someone who's getting your first dog, got your first dog, on your second dog, and you have rode the struggle bus, look at the Upland Institute. And the Upland Institute, it's the only system like it online, period. I'll go to my grave with that one. Somebody write me about something that's better than the Upland Institute to help you train your dog, help you become a dog trainer. Not a dog trainer where you hang your shingle out, but where you can say, I trained that. I took the steps. I followed the drills. It will make your hunting season better, and it'll make you get here quicker. It really will. I don't know how that works, but it does. Patrons, yeah. Another discount. Love you guys. Love you girls. Love you patrons more. All right, everybody. I am on the Zoom call with Dr. Scott Smith. I met Scott at the Jim Foot Chapter event in Gladwin last year, right, Scott?
Yep, that was it.
And you gave a talk people had a lot of questions for you. Of course, anytime there's a vet and a bunch of dog people, they're like, please, it's like Dear Abby, right? But you one of the things you talked about a lot, and it's a big interest to everybody, is ticks and tick-borne diseases in dogs. And, and I mentioned to you before we hit record, when I first moved to Michigan, I came from Illinois, I don't even think I gave them a second thought. And it's been a few decades, but ticks have become what's the word I'm looking for? Monumental, a big percentage of veterinary care. What's over the 30,000 view of ticks and dogs and us and everything? Because it's starting to make me nervous a little, just because nobody likes finding that tick on them. But the one thing you had said, and I know I don't have the data right on it, but you were kind of describing the bite to digestion to blood draw to like there's a time when the tick can bite you and you can pull it off and it's probably fine, but
Right.
I don't want to screw that up any more than that, Scott. So take it
Yep.
from there.
Yep. So yeah, ticks, and it's real interesting that you mentioned that, Ron. Part of the reason, and I moved up to up to northern Michigan in 2003. I was working down in Indianapolis at that point. I kind of bounced around a little bit, and I was in a practice where I was doing 312s one week and 412s the next. So I'd have big blocks of time off. I'd come up north, and finally I said, "Hey, why don't I just move up there?" So when I moved up here to the area I'm in, we didn't have ticks. There were not ticks in the area. We did not talk about Lyme disease vaccination, with our clients, other than maybe the people that were traveling with their dogs,
Mhm.
going to the UP, stuff like that. All of our parasiticide stuff was focused on dealing with, fleas. Ticks weren't an issue.
Yeah.
And it's probably been, it's really probably been the last 8, 10 years. We kind of started to see ticks, and then you would see more ticks, and then you would see more ticks. At first, we were seeing a lot of dog ticks.
Hmm.
Um, the last few years, it's gotten it within the last 5 years, it's shifted to where the majority of ticks I'm seeing are deer ticks, Ixodes scapularis, and that's the one that can spread everything under the sun as far as tick vector diseases. Um, and at the same point, I don't think the first 10 years I was up here, probably first 12 years I was up here, I diagnosed any tick vector diseases.
Wow.
And now I'm having positive dogs on a weekly basis. The last statistic I got from the lab we use, was that right now 1 out of every 15 dogs that we do a screening test on is coming up positive for either Lyme disease or anaplasmosis,
Wow.
which is a lot. And on the western side of the state, some of the western counties along Lake Michigan, I know their incidence is as high as 1 in 5. So
Wow.
yeah. Now, and an important thing to remember, and I'll touch on this for folks too, is, when you go into your veterinarian and you're doing your annual wellness stuff, and they're recommending a 4DX or one of the other combo tests, which looks for heartworm disease and things like Lyme disease and Ehrlichia and anaplasmosis. Those are what you call antibody tests.
Hmm.
So it is looking for antibodies, which are the things the immune system makes against that disease. So
Okay.
it's really just an exposure test.
Okay.
So I'll see a lot of dogs that'll come from other practices, and oh, he's got Lyme disease, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't ever see where it was confirmed, and they put him on antibiotics and there's no titers done. So the dog may have or may not have. Um, like I said, 1 out of every 15 are coming up positive, but not 1 of every 15 have the diseases.
Okay.
So then you do confirmatory testing with Lyme disease. There's a quantitative test, a titer called a C6 quantification that looks for a particular protein from the tick. And then it gives you a number. And if it's above 30, they actually have the tick disease in the body. If it's less than, it was just exposure. With anaplasmosis, they actually can see changes because there's two forms of anaplasmosis, one that affects white blood cells and one that affects platelets. So you do what's called a comprehensive CBC, where a pathologist actually looks at blood smears looking for the parasite itself. So that's how you confirm or rule out that and Ehrlichia. So that's kind of a little bit on that, where a lot of people get confused as far as that. Anaplasmosis, I'll talk about that first because that's kind of newer, at least in Michigan.
Hmm.
Um, One thing with anaplasmosis, it's dose dependent. So the longer the tick is on the patient, the more likely it is that enough of the organism will be transmitted to cause disease. And I don't have a number whether, 10 organisms have to be transferred or 1,000 or whatever, but it is dose dependent. Um, Kind of the party line on how long it takes for anaplasmosis to be transmitted from the time the tick bites is 24 to 48 hours.
Okay.
That being said, that's a big maybe. And, and they're not really sure. And there are some there's some conjecture that it might be transferred as quick as 12 hours.
Okay.
Which is a problem because the to get the tick killed in 12 hours is pretty darn quick.
Right,
Uh,
because a typical day, you're out in the woods, and I remember this years ago. Actually, I was in Pennsylvania, which was probably back then it was more ticky,
oh yeah.
a tickier area, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I couldn't tell you except if I said, okay, we took the dogs out at 2 in the afternoon. The next evening, we're in our motel room, which is what, over 24 hours, right?
Hmm.
We're
Yeah.
petting the dog, and now we're feeling, oh my God. Oh, here's a tick. Here's a tick. Here's a tick.
Hmm.
I can remember sitting in the motel room with my friend Dave, and we're pulling ticks off of our dogs. And we weren't used to that from Michigan, but this was still 15, 18 years ago. And I didn't go back to my vet and say anything.
Didn't worry about it.
I guess, yeah, because I didn't have it. I'm like, oh, it's ticks, have and I know this is probably a question you may not be able to answer. Is like a tick bite does not mean you're going to get a tick-borne disease,
No,
but a tick bite is the only way you're going to get a tick-borne disease, right?
correct.
So you might get in an area, you might pull a dozen ticks off your dog, and as we were back in the day, a little oblivious,
Hmm.
nothing happened to the dogs.
Right.
Um, is the it's kind of a weird question. Are the ticks carrying it? Are like the percentage of ticks that are carrying that are higher too, or is just the amount of ticks are high? Like, where's the math on that?
Yeah, I think it's just that there's just more ticks than there used to be.
Right.
And that's kind of why are there more ticks? You talk to, large game biologists and stuff, there's more white-tailed deer in Michigan right now. I think more white-tailed deer everywhere right now than
Mhm.
there were prior to, since the Depression, when
Right.
everybody killed
Oh,
them off to eat.
100%.
So
Yeah.
the numbers are high. Deer hunter numbers in Michigan are down. You talk to deer hunters and they'll say, oh, there's not as many deer, there's too many hunters. But you sit and look at the actual numbers, deer number, deer hunter numbers are plummeting
Yeah.
in Michigan and many other states. Um,
Right. So there's
and
even less deer harvest, and
yeah.
more deers with this tick. So is the deer, this is another, I don't want to jump too much. I did a little Googling before we started this.
Hmm.
The, there's a deer, the black-legged tick or the deer tick. There's the American dog tick.
Hmm.
Is the deer tick the one that I'm not saying I couldn't tell the difference, but is there one that we're more concerned about than others?
Yeah, the Ixodes scapularis, the deer tick.
The deer tick.
Yeah.
And does that do anything to the deer, or have they just had it for time immemorial and they just, you know, they're just carriers of it?
Yeah, as far as
No.
I know, the deer is a carrier of Lyme, but they don't get Lyme disease per se. There are tick vector diseases that deer can get, and they're kind of starting to move this way,
Hmm.
um, which is a concern. But yeah, Lyme disease, what you'd call an intermediate host. It's kind of a
Okay.
life stage that organism has to go through.
And it's always a bite and a bit of blood, right?
Yep.
And here's another. This is like when you met me before, so there's going to be these are like fourth grade questions from my grandson, right? So
Yeah.
the little bitty tick gets on my dog
Yep.
and it bites him, and it eventually its body swells up.
Hmm.
All right. The, in a natural course of events, does that tick get back off the dog and then transfer something, or does it get off the deer and then do they go from a big swelled up tick back to a little tick and go out and look for more? How
They,
do they
they
do this?
the females lay eggs and die,
That's it.
and the males just die.
Okay.
And ticks, and just to talk a little bit about tick biology for a minute, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of misconceptions there. Um, it's something crazy like 75% of ticks will sort of overwinter, no matter how cold, how severe the winter is. They
Just
just They just go into a hypobiotic state. They slow down. They stop wherever they are. And
they're basically frozen in time.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah, suspended animation, whatever you want to call it. And if it warms up above 32 degrees, above freezing, you get a little bit of sunshine, they literally will crawl out of the snow to feed.
Jeez.
I've picked off deer ticks off of myself or off of my dog, usually both because we're in the same places, every single month of the year up here, the
Wow.
last
Yeah,
couple of
because
years.
we get thaws in especially
Yeah.
these years. And I guess that is something to do with, the climate. Because I just remember the winters that were in Michigan when I moved here.
Hmm.
And there really wasn't, so there probably was 3 months where I didn't have to worry about a thing because it was literally below 30 degrees almost every day.
Hmm.
But I did not realize that 32 degrees is enough to get them moving.
Yeah, yeah. And another interesting fact is they are a year old before they're going to start transmitting disease.
Wow.
Year one, you've got eggs, and then the eggs turn into larvae. The larvae go through the fall, they overwinter, and they turn into what are called nymphs the next spring.
Hmm.
And that's the first life stage that can transmit disease. The nymph of Ixodes scapularis is 2 millimeters long. So it's tiny.
Yeah, yeah, that's tiny.
That's like sesame seed size. So
Right.
the nymph, that's like May and July. So when you're out in the doing like spring in the springtime, picking mushrooms or wading down,
Turkey hunting.
walking through the woods to your favorite spot on the river, or whatever, and you're getting ticks all over you. Those are nymphs. Those are kind of an intermediate life stage, but that's like May, July, and then after that they turn into adults, and they're an adult, from like late summer through the fall, through the winter. If they do not feed, they will overwinter, and those adults will feed the next spring.
God,
So
it sounds like they were made by Satan himself.
yeah, yeah. Forget the cockroaches surviving the
Right.
apocalypse. It's gonna be ticks.
Right.
Uh, but that's where a lot of people get into trouble is they think, oh, we've had a frost.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to continue with our flea and tick medications.
Right.
And so that's where they get into a lot of trouble with it. So yeah, so that's more tick biology than anybody probably wants. Uh,
No, I think it's interesting because you know, when you sit on a tailgate with enough bird hunters, boy, you got 80 opinions about ticks, you know.
mhm.
Um, I remember when I first moved here, the one thing that we were concerned about was um what's the mosquito the one
West
that
Nile.
not West Nile, the oh come on. Heartworm. Heartworm.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Hmm.
that's just a mosquito, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that there's no crossing between heartworm and ticks or anything like that. That
No,
is,
the tick vector diseases have to go through the tick to become infective. They go through like a life stage change in the salivary gland of the tick.
yeah, that's what you were talking. That's one of the things you talked about up at the
Hmm.
RGS event. Could you kind of put that in a sentence or a paragraph that again, I know it could be 12 hours, 24 hours, but when that bites, it's not immediately like how does that work?
Yeah. So the tick, whether it's the larval form or the nymph, feeds on either a deer or a mouse,
My,
white-footed mice, and they get Borrelia burgdorferi into them, or anaplasmosis for that matter, into them that way. Then it goes through a molt, essentially. You can think of it like molting into a different life stage, the organism, and becoming infective in the salivary glands of that tick. The tick attaches, it bites, and the way a tick bites is it kind of secretes like a digestive enzyme. It doesn't really bite it, it digests a hole into your skin, sticks specialized mouth parts in there that it glues into place. That's
yeah,
why when you rip a tick off, you'll get a little knot there sometimes
yeah,
because you left the mouth parts in, which is fine. It's just like a thorn breaking off. So it goes through all that. Then it starts to take that blood meal and starts to feed, and then it's regurgitating back into the tick the organisms. So the waste is going in, so the blood's coming into the tick and it's injecting the waste back into the body. And the waste is where the organism is coming from.
Oh, this is creepy.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the Borrelia burgdorferi lives in the gut of the tick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, but not in every tick.
No, no, not every tick's going to be infected. It just depends on if that tick fed on an infected intermediate host.
Wow. Wow.
So there's a lot to that. So and then like I say, the transmission, Lyme disease we know is at least 24 hours. Excuse me,
Mhm.
and typically closer to 48 hours for transmission.
Okay.
Anaplasmosis, they say 24 to 48 hours, but like I said, there's folks that think scientists that feel like maybe it's as short as 12 hours
Right. Can
with
you
the
give a
transmission.
brief difference on anaplasmosis and Lyme? Like,
Yeah.
what
So
what would
anaplasmosis, once again, it's still spread by Ixodes scapularis. 1 to 2 weeks from the time you're infected to where you would have clinical signs. The granulocytic anaplasmosis, the one in the white blood cells, is the most common.
Mhm.
And that's an organism called Anaplasma phagocytophilum, if anybody cares. Uh, so 1 to 2 weeks after transmission, you get these very vague clinical signs. A lot of times, tick diseases are real vague. These dogs will be lethargic, go off of food, they'll have fevers. Sometimes there's lameness, like you will have with Lyme disease. You can have GI signs like vomiting and diarrhea. You can have respiratory signs with coughing, respiratory distress,
Hmm.
those kind of things. Prognosis, though, is very good with that. I mean, typically 1 or 2 days on antibiotics and the patient feels better.
So I mean, I don't want to say the bottom line is, and that's for dogs that we're not even talking about a dog that's treated with anything yet at this point. We're talking about
Right.
just a tick that bites and has that antibody and puts it into you. Are the symptoms going to be, maybe you can't speak to this or you can. So let's just say me and my dog both got bit by a couple of ticks that were infected.
hmm
Is it going to be the same for us too? Like vague symptoms, or does it hit us differently? Or
With
dogs and humans are so different.
anaplasmosis, it can occur in people, and the symptoms are going to be real similar. I mean,
Okay.
it behaves. Anaplasmosis in people and dogs will behave very similarly as far as the incubation period. Like when you would start getting sick, the types of symptoms you would have, those kind of things.
Right. You could
And
be
and in
with them
fact,
a
like
little,
oh, go
with them
ahead.
it
Sorry.
might be like a little lameness for us. We'd be stiff or sore or
Yeah.
achy.
Yeah. Swollen, painful joints,
Yeah.
fever, GI signs, those kind of things. And I mean, you'd feel bad enough that, anybody with any common sense would be seeing a doctor.
Right. Right.
Now,
Right.
is the doctor going to look for anaplasmosis? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, they're not in tune because they don't do screening tests in people for tick. You don't go to your doctor once a year and they don't check you for Lyme disease and Ehrlichia and anaplasmosis.
I did only. Oh, I got to go off a side story, Scott. I,
Uh-huh.
I went to North Dakota this spring, and the people that are generous hosts of us, they have a home that they open up to me and some friends, and they told me on my way out there this spring, they said, make sure you got the dogs covered with, collar. Um,
hmm
and I say, I've just never been to Dakotas in the springtime. And they said, yeah, the ticks are really bad. I said, well, we're always there in September. We don't see them. She goes, no, in the spring, it's bad here.
hmm
And I had a tick bite on the top of my head, right where a little bald spot started years ago.
hmm
And I had I went to get a haircut, and the girl that was cutting my hair, she goes, "What is that?" And I'm like, "What is what?" She goes, "You got like a big scab on the top of your head." And I remember every night out there in my sleeping bag, waking up with you feel them walking on you, and oh, dang it, there it is. I take my lighter and
hmm
kill them. And I had just at the same time I got home, I helped a guy put in 24 post holes for a barn and helped him do some barn raising. So, being retired, Now I'm using a shovel for 8 hours. Okay, so you hear where I'm going.
Hmm.
Thing was hurting, and then she said she saw a bite, and I went in for blood work, and they gave me a test for it. But you're right, they don't just do that. They don't.
No.
I said to him, I have a tick bite, and I was in North. I gave him the whole spiel about it, but
Yeah.
it turned out I just overworked a shovel.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a
Yeah,
good thing. And that's one thing I always caution my clients, if their dog comes up positive for Lyme or anaplasmosis or what have you, even if it ends up not having the disease, I
yeah,
say, keep that in the back of your head. And I said, if anybody I said, because your dog goes where you go. I mean, the days
yeah.
of, for the most part, I mean, when I was a kid, you had the dog and roam wherever. Dogs don't do that anymore.
No, they
They're
sleep
where
in the
we are.
house, on the couch, in bed.
Yeah, yeah, in the fenced yard, the invisible fence, in the woods with us, but they're not off doing their own thing. So wherever the dog's been, we've been. And I said, physicians typically are not in tune with looking for tick vector diseases. So, if somebody's got some weird something going on, be sure to mention, hey, our dog tested positive for Lyme disease
Right,
last fall or something, and
right.
that might ring a bell with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do we like as far? I don't know if it's called best practices. I'm sure this has evolved in the last 10 years,
Hmm.
from collars to vaccines to the drops down the back.
Hmm.
All of them, none, and not, I don't mean none of them. What do you prescribe with your patients' dogs for? You can only say tick prevention because nothing's 100%, right?
No, no, nothing. Yeah, nothing's ever 100%. But yeah, I think bar none, one thing that absolutely has to be a portion of your tick control is one of the isoxaline class of parasiticides.
Okay.
The isoxalines are your chewables. It's the NexGard, the Bravecto, the
Yep.
Simparica, the Credelio.
Yep.
Those are going to give the fastest speed of kill out there. And
Hmm.
in fact, I think all of them now carry a Lyme disease prevention guarantee.
Wow.
Okay. I know NexGard does. NexGard was the first one. They've had that for about 6 years now.
Mhm.
If your dog and you can show documentation that, yep, here's 12 months worth of NexGard purchased, for Fluffy. They'll pay for the testing and the treatment for the dog.
Wow.
So they guarantee these things for Lyme disease. Um, that bar none is the best way to go, is one of those products. Um, that being said, there is a concern about increased seizure risk on that category of drugs.
Okay.
Um, it's really a little bit nebulous. Is this really a thing they cause seizures or not? There's enough internet stuff out there that the FDA did put a warning out on these that
Yeah.
could increase seizure risk. As I understand it, if it's going to make the dog have a seizure, they're going to take the med and they're going to have a seizure next 12 to 24 hours kind of thing. It's
Right.
going to be as they're metabolizing the drug. It's not going to be like, okay, my dog never had seizures. I gave it a dose of NexGard, and now it has a seizure disorder. It's not like that. It's
Right.
take the med, have a seizure. So, and if you give the dog the med and they have a seizure within the next 24, 48 hours, you're like, okay, obviously that's not an option for us.
Right.
We got to go
Right.
back with some of the more old-fashioned ways to do it. I, knock on wood, have never prescribed one of these products for a patient and seen them have a seizure from it. Now,
Right.
tomorrow I probably will.
Hmm.
Uh, but and I have dogs with seizure disorders, that have been diagnosed, dogs with epilepsy and whatnot,
Right.
that take NexGard every single month for flea and tick control. And it's had no, and I caution the owners, we discuss it, pros and cons, risks.
You feel pretty good about your load of evidence from years of work that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you've seen
Yeah.
that correlation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so and I talked to him about it. I said, hey, watch if seizures are more frequent, whatnot, we'll go with something else. But you're going to have Lyme disease up here if you're not doing something like this.
Yeah.
I actually was at a CE meeting in January. Part of it was on dermatology, but the dermatologist, she's a dermatologist from Oklahoma. Apparently, she's the only dermatologist in the entire state of Oklahoma, but she uses the isoxazolines, of course, worried about fleas and flea allergy, dermatitis, and whatnot, not ticks. And she said she's had one dog, in her career that she's known that she gave an isoxazoline and it made it have a seizure.
Right.
And so it's not a common thing if it happens. And the risk of the tick vector diseases is great enough that it's worth trying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so the chewable once a month would be like your go-to.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Bravecto has a 3 month label. Um, it doesn't protect for 3 months though.
Okay.
That was kind of some, funny math, skewing the data a little bit to make it, and you'll get fair flea control for 3 months,
Right.
but your tick control is going to be comparable with the other products.
You're better off with the monthly
Yeah, yeah, because
for
they
now,
charge you good for that 3 month label.
let me jump to fleas a little bit. I mean, I remember one time we had fleas on the dogs here. I don't know how we got fleas, but it seemed like the dogs had fleas, and I don't remember what we did back in the day. Are fleas a concern or are fleas more like worrying about acne? You're not going to die from it. Are fleas just a
Yeah.
nuisance, or can they pass on stuff?
Well, fortunately, we don't have anything fleas are going to pass. I mean, that is like plague. The plague is passed from
Right.
rats to people via fleas. But yeah, as far as like with dogs, cats, no. It's what I tell folks about fleas and ticks and control. I said fleas are a nuisance. It's really gross to think that your dog or cat has fleas
Please.
because
Yeah.
90% of the flea population are the eggs and larvae that are in your house now.
Right.
Which is really grosses a lot of people out.
Yeah.
And I said, unless you have a dog with a flea saliva dermatitis, they're allergic to the flea bite. I said
Right.
they're a nuisance, but I said ticks will kill you.
Right. Right. But at that same point, you said if if you if you keep the dog on that, again, we know there's no 100% cure for this, but
Hmm.
if you kept the dog on the monthly chewable, but your dog could still get it,
Hmm.
as long as you're paying attention to the dogs, like how I think even my wife, she doesn't have a hunting dog, she has a corgi, but she pays attention to that dog she knows when it's like he's not feeling good today, he's not
Hmm.
pooping right. Like if we pay attention to our dogs, get them in for some blood work, the antibiotics, is it deadly only if it's just ignored or can it be deadly either way?
It's, you
Or is
know,
that just like the bad luck of one dog that couldn't
yeah,
handle it? Yeah.
it's so with the two forms of anaplasmosis, granulocytic anaplasmosis, they're going to be sick enough that you're going to get them in and get them looked at. I mean,
Right.
these are dogs with high fevers. They feel crummy. And
Right.
Ehrlichia is the same way. Ehrlichia dogs, which you see down south. I used to see Ehrlichia dogs all the time in Arkansas, but those are dogs that come in and they are sick when they come in. They feel bad. They've got high fevers. They
Yeah.
look like a dog that needs to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
So you're going to treat those dogs soon enough that you're not going to have a problem. Now, Ehrlichia platies can be a little different. Ehrlichia platies attacks the platelets. So
Okay.
that organism attaches to the platelets. So then the dog's immune system attacks their own platelets because they see them as damaged,
Oh,
and you can run into bleeding disorders.
wow.
But that's not like they're fine today and they bleed out tomorrow. They're going to
Right.
start
Right.
bruising. You're going to see blood in the urine or blood in the stool. So there's going to be things you're going to see with that. Now, Lyme disease can be a little different. In dogs, there's two big syndromes with Lyme disease. We've got the one that everybody thinks about with the lameness, and they'll come in. It's called a Lyme polyarthropathy, multiple swollen, painful joints. So you're gonna have the dog that comes in limping, and I've had a number of them. The dog comes in and they're like, yeah, she's limping on her left front leg, and you look at her, I did horses for too long, so I have them take them out and run them up and down the hall so I can watch how they move. Uh,
Right. Right.
and I'll watch this dog go, and I'm like, yeah, she's limping on that left front leg. But I said, this dog looks like it hurts everywhere. So then you
Right.
start palpating, and okay, this joint's swollen and hot, and this joint's swollen and hot, and then you're like, okay, before I do a bunch of X-rays on your dog and spend a bunch of money, I said, let's do a 4DX and see. And boom, there's Lyme disease.
Yeah.
So you'll see that presentation. And those dogs with treatment do very well.
Okay.
Okay. They feel better within just a couple days. Then you do a follow-up titer 6 months later to make sure it's gone. If it's not, you retreat and blah, blah, blah. Usually if they're still positive 6 months later, I go back and I look, I'm like, okay, in the last 6 months, these folks have only bought 3 months worth of flea prevention,
So they
or
may
flea
still
tick.
be getting reinfected.
They're getting reinfected. Exactly. But the other type of syndrome we can get with Lyme disease that can be a little more serious is you can get what's called a Lyme nephritis, which affects the kidneys, basically
Oh,
throwing them into acute kidney failure.
mm,
So that can get quite bad quite quickly. And so if that kind of slips up on you, you can lose dogs to Lyme nephritis.
wow. And you may not notice symptoms when it's a kidney thing with the dog.
Not initially, oh
Right.
yeah, and a lot of times it's
It's not
hindsight.
as apparent to us. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times it's a hindsight thing. You see them and oh man, the kidney values are high. Oh, they're Lyme positive, that kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, maybe the last couple of weeks they've been drinking more than they used to. And, it seems like, yeah, you had an accident in the house the other night and they never have an accident. Those kind of things in hindsight, a lot of times people will see.
Right, right. But the upside is if we give them let's say the chewable
Hmm.
and we don't see any symptoms, would you normally run a blood panel once a year on a dog for that, or only if there was some symptoms?
I recommend checking them once a year for the simple fact that if you and it started with heartworm tests.
Okay.
When used to you'd go in, just got the heartworm test, and
Right.
now I think they're almost all combos. Is that these pharmaceutical manufacturers that are making your NexGard combo and your Bravectos and Simparicas and Cordelias and all these, with their guarantees, if you're testing once a year, that keeps their guarantee up. So if you're
Yeah.
buying the product and you're doing
Might as well do that.
yep, they'll pay for whatever associated costs.
Right. Now, not to pick on products or there's also the drops that you put on the dog's shoulder blades, and there's
Uh-huh.
I know a lot of people that swear by Seresto collars. Like
Yeah.
they will zip tie. I know a guy that's like, I buy the extra large Seresto collar and he cuts it up into pieces and he zip ties it to his dog's collar.
Hmm.
That's not, does that just repel the tick from wanting to be there? It doesn't do anything for the tick bite if they got a tick bite, or is that
No, no. So what Seresto collars, and I actually do like Seresto collars in
Mhm.
conjunction with a chewable.
Okay.
But the Seresto collar is a drug called flumethrin.
Okay.
Flumethrin is the same family of drugs as like permethrins.
Like we
And
spray on our
permethrins,
clothes and stuff. Like,
yeah, that you treat your clothes with.
Mhm.
Back in the day, like your old, Adam's flea and tick spray and
Yeah.
dip and all that
Yep.
stuff. Those were permethrins. Um, permethrins can be permethrin can be pretty harsh. I mean, you'll see a lot of dogs that'll get kind of sick and punky when you bathe them or spray them or dip them in permethrins.
Right.
Um, they're really toxic to cats.
Oh.
Permethrins are, but flumethrin is the same family, and you get the same kind of control, but it's not. It doesn't have that toxicity to the
Mm.
animal itself. So that makes it a lot nicer product. I like them in conjunction with the chewables because the chewable, if the tick bites them, it's going to kill them. But like you said, the dog's sleeping in our bed, laying on our couch. Um, the tick isn't going to die until it becomes attached to the dog. So,
Okay.
you're gonna go out and you're gonna run in the woods, you're gonna throw them in the truck, you're gonna come home an hour later, you brush the burrs out of them and they're in the house. Well, those ticks that are, especially a heavy coated dog like a setter, those
Yeah.
ticks that are crawling around in the hair and aren't attaching, maybe they attach to the dog tonight, or maybe they crawl out in the bed and attach to you.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. Or your wife. Uh,
So is there now this is a really sideball question here. So we have a chewable for us, for the dogs, right?
yeah.
Is there a chewable for humans? Is there something we can take? Or I know we can usually find a tick on us when we find a tick, but
Not yet.
not
But
yet.
but it's interesting that you bring that up, because I actually just had a conversation, and I spend a lot of time digging into this, and it's kind of interesting to me, looking at the different ones and trying to compare and trying to figure out, okay, how much of this is real science and how much of this is, paid for by the company that makes the drug, and
Right.
those kind of things. But I was having a conversation with the tech service vet from Elanco, and they make Credelio and Credelio Quattro, which is a really good product. But Lottolaner is the isoxaline that is in that. And they are working on coming out with a Lottolaner for people,
Wow. Ooh.
which, and I guess there's already a Lottolaner, that's a hard word to say, eye drop for people. Um, One of the side effects, I guess you could call it, of the isoxalines, it's kind of like sildenafil. They developed it for pulmonary hypertension, and found that it had interesting side effects during the clinical trials, and decided it'd be better to sell it for that. But it so one of the side effects they have found with the isoxalines is they kill demodectic mange,
Okay.
so red mange.
Yeah.
So there is apparently in our eyelashes, we have a form of demodectic mange mites. People do.
Oh, great. That's what I needed to hear today, Scott.
Yeah. And it can cause a blepharitis, so it can cause inflammation in the eyelids. And I don't know if it's like a hypersensitivity thing or whatnot. So they now have a Lottolaner eye drop to treat people with Demodex blepharitis. So there is a product out there so far, but just for that specific thing. But he said there's definitely a in the works, a human. I don't know if it'd be a monthly or boy, I just got out and got a bunch of ticks. I'm going to need to take one of these now, kind of things, or how it would.
I tell you what, I probably wouldn't even wait for clinical trials. If they sold it, I would buy it just because everybody has that like that. I don't know anybody that just goes like, ah, it's a tick. Most people get the heebie-jeebies. They just
Mhm.
do. I would take it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you remember Frontline, the
Yeah.
topical one on the back.
Right.
Frontline comes in a spray. You can buy it in a spray. I think you can still get it in a spray, not just the spot on. And the
Mhm.
spray was like 1 pump per pound of body weight or something. So, if you're treating a Chihuahua, it'd be fine. But if you're treating anything, your hand would
70
cramp
pound
before you got
dog, you're
done.
soaking them down with, yeah.
I used to, when I lived down south, I would see a lot of people that would buy it and use that on their lower legs and stuff going out in the woods.
Would you?
Yeah, yeah, you see a lot of people that did that. So
Just like, screw it. It's got to work. It works for the dog. It's going to work for me. Yeah.
can't be much worse than the permethrin stuff you spray on your clothes, but
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we probably can't get into all that. I mean, I put bug spray on for mosquitoes, right?
yeah.
I'm sure it's probably not good for my skin, or I'm sure it's probably not great, but it keeps the
Mhm.
mosquitoes away. But I guess we take some chances. We take chances with our dogs out there, but
Oh, you do. You do.
yeah.
It's yeah, I can't like DEET, which is, the biggie for mosquitoes. I can't use. It makes my lips turn numb,
Really?
numb and tingly when I use some kind of weird thing. So I'll
Oh,
use picaridin or something like that. On myself. So, but yeah, that and it's interesting when we talked about Lyme, or how anaplasm in people and dogs would look the same.
yeah.
Lyme in people creates a very different syndrome. So of of the dogs that get Lyme disease, only 5 to 10% actually develop symptoms. So,
Okay.
so you have this large group of dogs that they're positive on the antibody test. You do a titer, you've got a positive titer, but they don't have a symptom. So what do you do with that dog? Do you treat that dog? Do you not treat that dog?
I don't
And,
know.
and it depends on who you talk to.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of folks, and we're kind of in medicine right now. We're kind of scared of antibiotics, and don't use antibiotics.
Vaccines and you name
Yeah,
it.
yeah. It's There is some evidence that even though these dogs don't have symptoms now, long term, it may lead to some joint degeneration and disease,
Okay.
make them more likely to develop arthritis. So I personally recommend treating them even if they're asymptomatic because of,
Right.
of the risk of long term sequelae.
It's,
But you'll see that there are some doctors that definitely won't recommend treating that asymptomatic dog.
wow.
Um, Whereas in people with Lyme disease, and this is a scary fact, 90% of the people that get Lyme disease will develop symptoms.
So yeah, animals are just a little tougher than we are, apparently.
Something. Well, and the thing is it symptoms in dogs with Lyme disease. Now, anaplasmosis was 1 to 2 weeks. Um, Lyme disease, you're looking at 2 months or longer before they develop symptoms.
Wow.
So it takes a long time. Whereas in people, the symptoms are going to develop essentially within the first 2, 3 days.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That
so
goes to
it's
my tick scare when I worked too hard with a shovel. I was like, "Oh, this must be Lyme disease." My biceps, my elbows, my forearms, my wrists all hurt. So yeah.
mhm.
As it turns out, I was a little hypochondriac there, but
Yeah, weekend warrior.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, Not to cut that off, but I mean, so ticks aren't the only thing we need to worry about. I mean, it's
Mm-mm.
nice to know that we can combat it pretty effectively.
Yeah,
But
I mean, my recommendations are annual screening, a chewable, one of the isoxazolines, plus or minus a Seresto collar if you're getting out in the woods with the dog and stuff.
right.
And I recommend doubling up and doing the Lyme disease vaccine on top of it.
That's an option that yeah, I mean you can or can't take, but that's not would that be with the tablet and the Seresto, or would that
I
be just
would, I would,
we just do it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, there's enough of it, and it's bad enough, and it can be bad enough news that I don't want to muck around with it
Just
myself.
just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not the only thing we need to worry about because we talked a little bit about this is summertime. People are training their dogs.
Yep.
It gets I worry a lot about it. In fact, a lot of training nights I'll go on. We have our training nights on Wednesday night. And when it's 80 degrees on a Wednesday night, I'm not even taking my dog out because I know they can handle a certain amount of heat, but I don't think people are that good at reading it, or sometimes they're a little overzealous about training.
Hmm.
Is there some good parameters on temperature and training and heat exhaustion and like what to look for with dogs for that? Because that could you can worry all you want about ticks and you can kill your dog with a bad day in the heat.
Oh, you can. So heat stroke, and talking about killing them, if a dog gets to the point of heat stroke,
Hmm.
you're looking at about 50% survival.
Wow.
Yeah, about 50% survival. They have found, though, that with pre-cooling, if your dog gets to the point where it has a heat stroke, if you are able to cool that dog down, and it requires serious ICU veterinary care to get through this. But
Right.
if you pre-cool that dog, once it hits heat stroke, you increase the odds of survival to about 80%.
Wow.
So it's big. So 3 stages. So the big thing it's heat related illness is kind of the HRI is kind of the what they call this by. Um, and there's 3 stages of HRI. You've got heat stress. With heat stress, this is the dog that they start to look tired. They start to slow down. They start to lose focus. They just keep panting, panting, panting. The saliva starts to get kind of thick and gooey. They feel warm to the touch. That's that dog that tongue's starting to hang out like they're going to trip on it and get big and wide and look like a spatula.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Even sometimes they'll have the cheeks pulled back like they're smiling almost. You're looking for those brick red mucous membranes. They're not pink anymore. These look like brick red.
Right.
That kind of thing. That's the dog at that point where you've got that heat stress. Stop what you're doing. Get them in the shade, get them cool, make sure they got plenty of water to drink. Those kind of things. Let them rest until they're fully recovered. And probably at that point, you're best off saying, okay, that's it for the day. Let's go back to camp. Let the dog hang out and have a couple beers.
Right.
Okay. So that's your heat stress dog. Heat exhaustion are all of the symptoms of heat stress. Plus, this is the dog. It's starting to actually get stumbly.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's non-reactive. It just can't stop panting even for a second. The eyes start to look sunken. The gums are tacky to the touch, feel sticky. Maybe they're starting to vomit. Maybe they're starting to have tremors, those kind of things. Um, you need to get that dog cooled down, get him out of the field, get him cooled down, and you need to be heading for a vet. That dog needs to be on fluids at that point. That's heat exhaustion. Heat stroke, all of those symptoms. These dogs they're knuckling, they're falling down. Maybe they've even gone to the point of being comatose. Um, Urine is just dark brown, looking almost a burgundy brown kind of thing.
Mhm.
Seizuring, coma, those kind of things. Once again, that thing's got to be cooled down, and if you're lucky, the dog's going to come home after 2 or 3 days in ICU.
Wow.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. And the thing is there's not, it's hard to say, okay, this temperature, that temperature, because it's about, air temperature, it's about the amount of humidity, it's about the amount of moisture. You can get by with a whole lot more if there was a heavy dew and you're in good cover, so they're soaked from the ferns, those
Right.
kind of things. You're going to get by with a whole lot more than that than if you're out on the prairie in sparse grass that's 6 inches tall and it's dry as a bone. Okay,
Right.
so two different environments.
Right.
Is there a breeze? Is there sun? All of those things, and a lot of it depends. A lot of it's genetics. Dogs get rid of most of their body heat by panting.
Hmm.
So, older dogs, they can't lose as much heat that way because their respiratory tissues aren't as elastic. Those kind of things. If you've got a dog that maybe's got a little bit of a hypoplastic trachea, which is kind of a genetic thing, the trachea is a little smaller than normal, that can create an issue. So, the panting is important and just radiant heat through the skin. So, is it a thin coated dog? Is it a heavy coated dog? An
Right.
English pointer is going to tolerate a lot more heat than an English setter.
Right.
Those kind of things to look at. Your Griffon is not going to tolerate stuff as well as a short hair.
Right.
So you've got to look at inherent things like that. Um, as far as cooling dogs, kind of the traditional has been, soaking them down with water, alcohol on the foot pads, cooling vests. They have what they call partial water immersion, where you actually dunk them down into a tank of water. And all of those things are good. All of those are better than doing nothing. Okay. The isopropyl alcohol thing has kind of fallen out of favor. Used to put alcohol like on the foot pads and the inside of the ear flaps for evaporative cooling. They found that there's some things with that can cause increased heart rate, which can kind of exacerbate things.
Hmm.
And they think some of it's smell and some of it's some of the stuff being absorbed through the skin. So that's kind of fallen down. So all the rest of them basically involve water being used on the animal one way, shape, or form. Okay. Um, the best and this and there's been a couple studies and just to back up because you can go online and read any of this. There's a nice YouTube video out there. And there is University of Pennsylvania. They have what is called the PENN vet working dog group. And this is canine sports medicine folks, and they deal with working dogs, whether it's, search and rescue dogs, military working dogs, law enforcement working dogs, hunting dogs. This is their whole area of focus. So they've done a lot of studies the last couple of years figuring out and the head of the program actually, she was in Zambia or something, I think, working with their working dogs with the poaching stuff.
Yeah.
And this kind of inspired her because partial water immersion wasn't an option because the water had hippos and crocodiles.
Right. You ain't walking in that water.
No, so that wasn't an option. So they were doing, having troughs they were carrying. And so she wanted to find a better way. So she developed what is called the voluntary head dunk. Okay, and you Google it. The videos are great. Voluntary head dunk. You do NAVTA stuff, don't you, Ron?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, NAVTA should make this part of their training and certification.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I haven't started trying to train my setter for this yet. I don't know how well that's going to work with a setter, but boy, these continental breeds, they would take to this like ducks in water. So
Hmm.
basically what you do is you start out with an empty bucket and you put a high value treat or a toy or whatever in the bottom of it, and you get the dog comfortable reaching in for the treat or the toy. And then you add maybe an inch of water, you do the same thing. And basically, you continue that until the dog will voluntarily walk up and stick its head in a bucket of water above its ears. And that gives the fastest. And when they did these tests, they actually had used, I don't know if these things are Bluetoothed or what have you, but they made them swallow temperature sensing pills so they could read the true core temperature on these dogs.
Wow.
And yeah, the stats on how quick this dropped the temp was absolutely insane. Let me see if I can find that number
Is
right
that
here.
because all the blood vessels in the mouth and
The mouth, the ears, the face, all these high percentage of blood vessels
right?
that you're getting cooled down when they dunk it in there. But yeah, you're getting the quickest cooling and the most consistent cooling with that. It's crazy.
When you mentioned NAVDA, and I judged for them for many years, as well as now the Federation, which is it's another versatile dog test. We always had a couple barrels of water out there, and on
Hmm.
some really bad days, we would actually put a block of ice in the water just because the water would end up getting to be 80 degrees by 2 in the afternoon.
Right.
It's amazing how many dogs young dogs always that did not want to go in the water. Like no one ever put me in a bucket. It's like the first time
Hmm.
you put your kid in a crib or something. You're like, no,
Yeah.
no. But and I remember a judge showed me, they always said if you can't get the dog to submerge in the water, the body to to cool the ears down, like just soak
Hmm.
the ears down, and then the groin area. I mean, is that if you had limited water, is that still if you don't have
Yeah,
the
oh, definitely. What I carry with me, I carry a lot of water. In fact, I switched vests last year, and I carry when it's warm, I carry a 3 liter hydration bladder and
yeah.
two big, whatever they are, 500 ml or whatever water bottles in the holsters. But I keep in the truck. I've got one of those. I think it's 1 gallon pump up garden sprayer,
Hmm.
and I will spray if it's warm and dry. I soak the dog down before we start,
Right.
um, particularly the ears. Trying to get that thick setter ear hair wet.
Hmm.
The ears up underneath, all of that kind of stuff, and I'll use that. And that's kind of a good second choice. I mean, the voluntary head dunk if the dog will do it, and that's realistic. And I've been thinking about things. It's like, okay, could I buy find a 3 gallon bucket that I could just keep full of water, have a lid snapped on it, and I could snap the lid off of it kind of thing to carry that wouldn't be too cumbersome. But, that's the best. Partial immersion, where you put the dog in the water trough and basically cover them is good. Other options are like ice packs on the collar. Okay, putting ice packs, attach them to the collar, wetting them down, particularly the head, the groin, the axilla. There's a lot of blood vessels in the armpits too.
Right.
And that's what's going to be. But you don't want to do the big Gatorade cooler after the football game thing with them and dump the ice water on them. You want it to be like room temperature water for the cooling. Too
Right.
too cold, you'll put them into shock.
Yeah, yeah. You're not trying to dunk them in. We're not doing an ice plunge.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Not doing cold plunges here.
yeah.
Um, I always found it funny that the dogs that we would get them to a barrel and they didn't want to go in, they didn't want to go in. And for a puppy test, it's only 20 minutes, but 20 minutes is a lot when they're running hard.
Hmm.
20, but we would kind of direct the handler and say, you know what, we found a couple birds. Let's get your dog back over to the barrel. And sometimes only the second exposure to the barrel, the dog's like, "Oh, that did feel good." And the dog,
Hmm.
the dog literally goes in there and lays on its side, and
Yeah.
it almost intuitively knows like that wasn't so bad. But uh, we've seen dogs that they freak out, they don't want to get in the water, but we would just soak basically their ears, neck. I never thought about the mouth part because that's like you said, there's probably more blood vessels
Hmm.
in the mouth.
So that tongue is a radiator.
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of one thing I wanted to touch back on, we talked about the different levels of heat.
Hmm.
I've seen those dogs that come back from the field, and it's a very fast. It's like you almost can't
Hmm.
impersonate it.
Yeah,
But they still seem clear-eyed and everything. That's just they're just doing the best job they can of getting the heat out of their body.
exactly. Yeah.
What about I heard somebody, I don't know if it was Dr. Sarah, somebody said knowing your dog's core temperature with a thermometer. Is
Hmm.
that useful or is it almost too late if you're checking it with a thermometer?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost too late if you're checking it with a thermometer, to be honest. And rectal temperature really isn't core temperature anyway.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Rectal thermometer is just like they're standing still kind of temperature.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I mean, core temperature is like literally in their core. In the body, rectal temperature is going to be affected by a lot of things.
Right.
You know how like a lot of these dogs when they're out hunting, they've got the squirts and they're stopping and evacuating their gut every oh hey they're on point. Oh no they're not.
No, no. No,
And so then
hard.
that's going to falsely lower temperature. So yeah, there's a lot that's with that. I mean, it's not bad information to know your dog's normal,
Right.
and then because if you've got a doubt, okay, are they too hot or not? You can check that temp and say, okay, no, normally when we're out here, they're running at 104 degrees and they're 104 and a half right now. They're fine.
It would almost be handier to just know your dog's normal rectal temperature. And then someday you come out to take them out and you're like, boy, you're not acting right.
Hmm.
That might be more useful to check their temperature non-exercise induced almost. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know like females, when they're whelping, they'll with the it drops, right? It drops
Yeah,
below
about 2 degrees, about 24 hours prior to whelping.
like 101 down to 90. If you see like 99 degrees, the puppies are imminent or something. But
Yeah, yeah. Well, and interestingly, I always tell folks if they're going to do that, start about a week, 5 to 7 days before they're due, because they can come a little early, and start checking that temperature twice a day and writing it down, because there will be a diurnal difference too. It might be as much as a degree and a half different between morning and evening. So
okay,
that way you're kind of in sync with what your dog's pattern is, and then all of a sudden, boom, oh yeah,
right. So the weapon of choice when you're worried about heat strokes is don't stick a thermometer up their butt. Get them cooled down. Get
yeah,
'em
yep, get them,
cooled
yeah,
down.
get them cooled off. Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, if it's a dire situation, uh, any kind of shade, right? Anything that
Hmm.
would
Oh,
and
even if the only shade is you.
right, you just create the shade.
Yeah.
That's enough. Um, when we said shade, I was thinking is I didn't see this. I'm just going to say 20 years ago, probably because they didn't have them. But so many people have the fans on the door of the dog.
Yeah.
Gunner makes one for theirs. A lot of people just go and get a Ryobi fan, battery operated fan.
Hmm.
Now, granted, you're already back at the truck. Is is that going to help cool a
Yeah.
dog down a
Yeah,
little?
that's evaporative cooling. So
Okay. Okay.
you've got at this point you've got the dog as wet as you can get them, uh,
Right.
and then the fan blowing over top of them is going to help.
It is going to help.
Yeah, with evaporative cooling.
And I also saw people, and see, it always goes to, when we talked earlier before we hit record, I said sometimes I'm an old curmudgeon about things. I see people, at a training day, their dog's in the truck, they haven't been out, they're basically under a cap in a nice open air kennel, and they got the fan blowing on them, but they haven't exercised or anything. And back in the day, I used these dog boxes that were made by a coon dog company. They had
Hmm.
big jail type doors on them and vents on the side. And I could put my hand inside that kennel on a 90-degree day and it was not uncomfortable. If they are not exercised, they're not going to overheat from laying in the shade and really I don't want to say any temperature, but the upper Midwest from Florida to where we live, you have a 90-degree day, your dog is fine if he's not exercising.
I think those old fashioned, like you say, like the coon dog kind of kennels with usually they were diamond plate or
Yep,
some kind of aluminum, and then they
yep,
always had that doubled up top.
Yep. Yep.
with the storage compartment. I think those stayed cooler than a lot of these newer kennels do, to be
I wish I
honest.
would have had the Govee thermometers back then, because I would see people, I'd say, they're like, "Isn't it hot in there?" I said, "Put your arm in there." And
Yeah.
it
Hmm.
was all that dead airspace around it. It didn't let it get,
Hmm.
but I know my friend Justin always said too, the biggest thing is never put your dog into the kennel if it's hot or if it
Yeah.
even seems to be hot. Let it, the more air circulation around it, the better. Yeah, which
Hmm.
would no more than we would make sense for that. But
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
so cooling them down, watch the heat. Any, is there a first symptom of it, or is it something like, because I know we run these dog tests, like they'll be in Iowa here in September, and those are going to
Hmm.
be 80-degree days.
Yeah.
Now, the dog certainly has some conditioning,
Hmm.
and this is just a softball question. A well could you can I assume you could condition your dog to a certain amount of heat stress,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right? It's as much of how conditioned they are as
Oh yeah.
folks.
I mean the lean, the lean fit dog that's been getting out and getting run, 3 to 5 times a week for the last month and is in
Right.
appropriate body condition is going to tolerate it a whole lot better, than that, lab coming off the couch 40 pounds overweight.
Right. So even that lean dog that might push himself a little far, he's going to cool down quicker. He's not going to have a layer of
Right.
blubber, so to speak, on him.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
And the thing too to remember too though is these dogs they're fit, they've got drive. Hunt test is one thing because it's kind of finite, but
mhm.
you're out in the woods, they're not going to have the sense to slow down and stop.
No,
They'll
no.
run till they drop. So, you need to, make them check in. I look at gum color a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Gum color and capillary refill time. Those gums, if they're turning red, it's time to stop. I'll flip up and feel the inside of the ear flap, those kind of things.
So, something my old vet that I was very fortunate to have well, he's older than us, but he's retired in years. And when you first get a dog, I think a lot, it's almost like being a first time parent. The cold, they get a cold, they get a fever. You call your mom says, they're fine, right?
Hmm.
He always told me to check the dog's gums. Now, this wasn't for heat, this is just for overall health.
Yeah.
They were pale, let me know. Bring them,
Hmm.
there should be a just almost better than knowing the temperature of the dog. You should know what this dog's inside of its mouth looks like, right? To be healthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Should never be pale and chalky, but then you should say it should never be brick red if you can avoid it.
Exactly. I mean, and that's like I'm doing an exam even on a well pet. That one of the I usually go nose to tail, as
Mhm.
long as the demeanor of the pet allows you to start at their nose. But uh, and flip up that lip, and I look at the very first thing I look at gum color. How do those gums feel? And what's my capillary refill time, which is where you like push
Press
your
on.
thumb against the gum and get the color blanch out. How quick does it come back? And it should be like 2 seconds, give or take a
It's
little
just
bit.
like pushing on your hand. Like you push,
Yep.
you move your thumb,
Yep.
and the
Same idea.
color
They,
comes back.
they they should feel moist and slippery. They
Right.
they shouldn't feel sticky. If you got that kind of dry mouth, that mwah kind of feel to them, they're too
Right.
dry. So they should feel nice and moist and slippery. And they should be some kind of a shade of pink. If they're pale, like you mentioned, they're anemic, they're not perfusing well, they're shocky, something like that. And if obviously if they're darker than they should be, they're either too hot or super dehydrated.
Mhm. If a dog is, this is another old curmudgeon thing. My wife and my daughters, they're all grown women, and they walk around with thermos, some kind of water jug all day long.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And my dogs, they drink water when they're thirsty. They don't walk around with a water jug.
Hmm.
But when it comes to that, there's a lot of supplements out there, and one of them is a sponsor of this podcast, and their product's called Hydrate and Recover. And there's several products like that.
Hmm.
I'm not saying you would know the science on it, but is there any advantage to, is water good enough, or are you giving them a little edge? Again, you got to have a dog that's in condition, and
Yeah.
without the overweight dog, Is there a little advantage to that? Does it do a little good for them?
Electrolytes don't really play the role with dogs that they do with people because dogs don't sweat.
So that's where the electrolytes come in.
Yeah, we lose the electrolytes through our sweat.
Right.
And they don't sweat. So they really don't benefit from supplementing with electrolytes unless it's something that maybe gets them to if it gets them to drink more, it's a plus.
Mhm.
That from that standpoint it can be good. Some of them I'm certain are supplemented with things like you know some form of sugar. Whether it's
Right.
dextrose or glucose or whatnot, so that'll give them a little bit of a lift for some of these dogs that need it too.
Yeah. But it's not bad, but it's
Yeah.
not Gatorade for the guy in the football field.
Yeah, no, no, no. So
Okay.
it's definitely not going to hurt anything. Could there be some potential benefits from it? Yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's completely necessary.
Right, right. Well, I'll have to go look on the jug and see what's in that thing if it's electro. I don't know what's all in there, but
Yeah,
it was a wilderness athlete or canine athlete was developed by a houndsman in Arizona, and he wanted his team to develop this product for his dry ground lion dogs, and
yeah.
everybody seems to like it, but it's kind of like Boss Ammunition. Don't get mad at me for that. They're another sponsor. You, you got to be a good shot to kill something, right?
Mhm.
It's not the BB. It's the shot placement,
Yep.
But a good BB is a good BB.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Well, and I'm certain the writing is on the wall on that it's not going to be sooner or later we're all going to be shooting non-toxic.
Yeah, yeah, and we're ahead of that. We're getting ahead of that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Anything else for us to worry about our dogs? I mean, we're getting kind of long. I know you got to get some grass mowed, and I got to get going too. But
Yeah.
and I want to talk about how we met through the RGS chapter you're working with.
Yeah. One
Um,
one thing that I do want to kind of caution people about, and I'm not just trying to keep people out of my covers this year,
mhm.
is you need to really think for folks that are planning to come up north and hunt in this area that got hit by the ice storm.
Oh yeah,
It's dangerous. I
it's
mean, and a lot of people are thinking probably about like leg injuries, getting hung up and ripping cruciates and stuff. I'm talking about dogs killing themselves.
it's just that
It's,
many.
there's that much stuff on the ground, and I'll tell you, get into these aspen thickets.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like spears,
Hmm.
and they're anywhere from laying on the ground, depending on where they got hung up, and there's broken off ends and branches stuffed everywhere, and pointing
It's
every which direction.
funny you said that because there's what is that? Red pine plantations. Those sticks are almost like spears right on the edge of the trunks of the trees.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know two people. One lost a dog, and one had a severe injury. The dog just impaled itself on that, and now you're talking how many counties have dead
Th-
limbs on the ground, like
Three
almost.
mil 3 million acres is what I heard.
Whew. All right,
3 million acres of forestry is like that. 1 million of it is state owned.
wow.
Um, I got that directly from DNR. So that's a real concern that people need to think about. And early season is going to be worse because you can't see it because the
Right,
you know how it is hunting in early season. The ferns are so high you can't even see what anything from 3 foot down.
right,
So and the dog's not going to be seeing it either. So
right.
if you've got that really hard hitting dog that's bouncing off the cover to start with,
Yeah.
you think about it. Do I want to put that dog on the ground in that stuff?
Go find a cover that's a little more friendly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a dog that came in 3 years ago. It was a short hair, and I think the guy was from Ohio. Came in, had a pretty good gash along the underneath side of its chest. It was probably 4 or 5 inches long,
Mhm.
about an inch deep. The dog came in, it's walking. Obviously, it's painful. Clear chest sounds. Its color looked good. Thinking it's a flesh wound. We took the dog. Kind of got pain meds on board. Got some antibiotics on board. Went to take it into surgery about an hour later. When we rolled the dog on its back, its lung lobe that had been plugging the hole in its chest fell away,
Oh my
and you heard
God.
this giant sucking sound. as it had instantly developed a pneumothorax. So, you know, we got somebody, one person got a finger in the hole, and, all of this stuff, got chest tube in, got the air pulled out. Anyway, ended up sending it down to Oakland Veterinary Referral. They asked for a $10,000 deposit to start on this case. So I have
Ooh,
no idea where the final bill ended up being. So fortunately,
wow.
this guy had deep pockets. The dog ended up, they did a thoracotomy, had to remove a damaged lung lobe,
Oh my God.
set an ICU with chest tubes in for a week. And the dog did okay. I mean, it's the dog's back out there again, but that that's that kind of injury. And then I had a beagle back when I was field trying with beagles, that I was running for a guy from up in Vermont. He sent him down to run with my dogs to stretch him out a little bit, and I ran him for maybe 6 months, sent him back up to him. He ran that dog. He finished for his AKC title. Boom, boom, boom. Won the next three trials he was in. He's running the dog for High Hound of the Year in the AKC. Ran a stick into his chest at a field trial ground in Massachusetts. Died in surgery at Tufts. So
Gee.
it's truly a danger. And I know a lot of people are looking at vests and stuff. I don't know. I think about where I've seen stab wounds from sticks, and I don't just personally, I don't know that I feel like the vest is. I mean,
Well,
it's better than it's all you can do, but
dogs don't run sideways. You
no, no.
know?
So
Yeah,
that's
it's
so
always
that's
that.
something for folks to consider. And talking about that ice storm damage, I'll kind of segue into Jim Foot chapter for a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Jim Foot chapter Rough Grouse Society was last active in 2019, prior to COVID, and it fizzled out during COVID, like a lot of stuff did. And then last year, me and a guy from Gaylord, Blake Renfro, we kind of both reached out to RGS independently, and we've kind of rebooted the chapter, and we've done some things like you talked about. We had the season kickoff last September. Um, we're starting a habitat project, and we've got a habitat project going with us and uh, two other chapters, Andy Amon chapter, and I can't remember the name of the third chapter. Sorry, but we've got a big habitat project starting up here. And the first thing we're doing is there's a hunter walk-in access site, one of those orange gated areas
Mhm.
that got absolutely pounded. That's due for a lot more work. We've got some log landings to rehab in there. We've got some soft mass to get planted. So we're having a habitat day August 9th, in conjunction with ourselves, Michigan DNR, and Michigan United Conservation Clubs came on board with us. So we're going to have that habitat day where we're going to be going in, cutting up stuff, dragging stuff out, getting it open again so people can get in there to enjoy the area, and so we can get in there and work on the habitat again.
I mean, I've always, when I first moved to Michigan, I joined RGS, and early on, I would let a membership lapse. And since I had the podcast, I've always said, like, I don't know I don't know another organization that has work in front of them like RGS does, or the
Mhm.
DNR,
Yeah.
because you know managing grasslands is way different than the forest.
Hmm.
And they are do I think they're doing a great job for us. I just had Zach Evans on, and we talked about the forestry trial. Like, the if I'll go right into my spiel. I do this all the time. People are probably like, "Oh God, Ron, you're going to say it." I said, if you take a wild bird from this country, wherever you live, you owe it to the habitat organization that supports the habitat for that bird.
Hmm.
And we don't have it here, or Pennsylvania, or Michigan, or Wisconsin, or Minnesota. The amount of people that go out and grouse hunt is, whether you're out of state or in state, it's sad how many people are not members of that organization. It's really sad.
It is.
They they are like, they got their finger in the dike all over the place trying to make it better for us, and we have to realize what they're doing for us. And an example is what you guys are doing for that weekend. But
Hmm.
I've always encouraged people. I'm a member of anytime I go, so if I ever hunted chuckers, which I won't, my knee's not going to let me. I have no desire to climb up a shale hill. But if I ever hunted chuckers, I would join, whatever organization support. I don't think anything supports chuckers, but
I don't know if there is or not.
I, because
There's got to be something.
the only reason they hunt those is because they live there. They have no other bird to hunt. But I strongly encourage people, is again, even if you're just a once a year hunter that comes up and tries to shoot some grouse and woodcock in Michigan, to join RGS, because those chapters, in fact, that you guys you did life support on the chapter. You did the chest compressions and you got it,
Mhm.
got it back coming up again.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying. So, and this is, like I said, we're springboarding off. We've sat with the DNR, and we've got basically a plan for the rest of this year and next year. And then that's going to segue into some other habitat work. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's opportunity financially to support some stuff. Like, part of what we're doing this year is we're providing clover seed and fertilizer to do, I think, 20 acres or something,
Yeah,
which basically is the trails.
right.
They'll do clover on those, which of course is good for the grouse. It's good for the turkeys. It's good for the deer,
Yeah.
the rabbits, pretty much everything. So, we're supporting them that way financially, but then also boots on the ground, getting in there and actually doing some of the work. And then next year we've got a much bigger project started in that area. And then we've got a whole new hunter access site that has just started and gone into, down in Roscommon County, we're going to be developing as well.
Well, sounds like besides being a one-armed paper hanger at work, because your assist your what I call your
Associate.
associate is on leave right now, and you're are you still do you open up on the weekends, or you just call it for your clinic? You
Yeah,
want to get a
it's
little
it's
break.
yeah, we're not doing weekends anymore. Um, I stopped doing weekends. I got down to, golly, this was probably 8 years ago. I got down to where I was the only doctor. I worked the whole practice by myself for a year.
Oh,
And really the caseload was about a three-doctor caseload. And I said, okay, I can't, I gotta have some time off. So I
right,
dropped the
right.
weekend. I had to drop the weekends at that point. And yeah, it really didn't make as big a difference as I thought it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to ask you about, we'll kind of wrap it up with this. You always hear about corporate veterinary medicine. And,
Hmm.
like again, I'm a little older than you. That probably wasn't a thing 30 years ago or 40 years ago of, you worked for a vet and you opened up your own clinic and you got your own customer base,
Hmm.
good, bad, or indifferent. It seems like a lot of certain areas of the country, a lot of veterinarians are part of when I say corporate, I don't even know what that, it's like when somebody says corporate farming, I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Does, does Elon Musk own a farm? I don't know what corporate farming means. What does that mean in the veterinary world, a corporate veterinarian place as opposed to a private practice?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So these corporate practices, or group practices, a lot of times they say group practices because I think it sounds more warm and
Right.
fuzzy. Basically, what this is it's, you know private equity money at the end of the day, but has come in, and they buy, they get usually it's a veterinarian that already owns two or three of his own practices,
Yeah.
and he gets partners with a money person,
Right.
and they start accumulating practices. And then what happens is you end up with things like payroll and ordering, and those kind of things are centralized. The practices are still basically managed and run locally,
By the same vet that owned the
by the by
clinic.
this by the same vet, or somebody that steps into that role, a medical director,
Yeah.
which kind of calling the shots for what goes on there. But all the business parts of it are centralized. And then you get, there's some group buying power, and some things like that, as far as like your drugs and supplies, your insurance for your staff, training, those kind of things. Um, and the reason we're seeing this happen more and more is that there's a certain population of doctors that you've got to consider that, these doctors now that are, anywhere from, 55 to 65 that have been practicing in that 30, 35, 40 year range that are
Right.
ready to retire. And the model I grew up with was just like you said, you came out, you worked in a couple practices till you decide, hey, I like this place. I can stay here. The practice is okay. I like the area, whatever. This is going to be home. And then you'd stay, you'd work there for a while. You bought in as a partner. Eventually, your senior partner retired, you own the whole thing. And then
Yeah.
you would have an associate that you would bring in as a partner to take over. Well, these doctors that are now in that 30 to 40 year out in practice age range don't have those associates that want to buy out anymore. They,
Right.
they, they
Not
don't
that
want to, if they can get
not
associates at
that
all.
next vet that comes in and says, I want to take over this eventually. And you're like, great,
Yeah.
this is a great way to transition. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just not a thing anymore, unfortunately, a very, very rare thing. So what you're seeing is these doctors as an exit strategy. Okay, I've worked for the last 30 years and I've got nothing in my 401k. There's no pension because I'm a small business owner, and I've put every extra dollar I've made all these years into the practice.
Right. New
Um,
X-ray machine, new test, new this, new that.
yeah, the real estate, new roof, whatever. And it's so how do I retire now? And so what's happening is you're seeing two things happen. Is one, they're turning to these group practices to sell out because otherwise they're not going to be able to retire. The other side of the coin that you're seeing is I'm seeing some of these doctors that either their practice is not something that would be appealing to a corporate practice, or they just are stubborn and they refuse to go that way, and they just work the practice into the ground. They don't put any more money back into the practice to modernize things. Everything goes in their pockets, and they essentially end up dying at work.
Yeah. Well, I'd go with the corporate.
And that's, and interestingly, currently, as of August of last year, 35% of all veterinary practices in the United States are owned by a corporation.
Wow. Wow.
Um, it was in 2021, it was 10%. So
Wow.
it's
So it is
changed that much that quickly.
it kind of goes with medical for humans. It's like
Oh,
these
yeah.
group come in, it's like everything in the area is now Mercy Health. Like they bought
Yeah.
up the little
Yeah. Yeah.
clinic, they bought up the med stop, and it's all part of Mercy Clinic.
Yeah. Yeah, the other stat I found is that 75% of all specialty practices and emergency practices are part of a group practice.
Group practice. Now, last thing I'm going to ask you, because I have struggled to get somebody on. In fact, another lady who runs a podcast about pure breed dogs, she great friend, became a friend of mine. I have been trying to get somebody on about pet insurance.
Hmm.
It's something, again, going the old curmudgeon. You couldn't have talked me to pet insurance 30 years ago for all the tea in China. The little bit of money I spent here, unless it was a dog that got hit by a car, it was always
Hmm.
manageable. Pet insurance, is that something? I don't know if you even know the numbers. I know it's your practice, Scott. Are you seeing more and more people with pet insurance coming to you, or is it still an under appreciated or underused thing?
I'm seeing more and more people using it.
Are you?
Yeah, and in pet insurance, you can buy the A plus super platinum thing
Right.
that
Covers everything. Yeah.
yeah, that covers your vaccines, covers the dental every year, all of those kind of things. Or you can kind of get basically major medical. You
Right.
can think of it that way, that if your dog gets really ill and ends up hospitalized at Michigan State, or gets hit by a car or
Leg,
blows
yeah.
a knee out or whatever, you know, TPLO surgery on a knee now is $5,000 to $8,000.
Right, right.
So
You're seeing
it,
that. Is it not the majority yet, but you're seeing it
yeah,
pretty
it's
strong?
it's it's definitely not the majority. I'm seeing a lot of people do the major medical type of thing.
Yeah.
Less people doing the covers everything. I've got um I've got a client that I knew well enough that she shared with me, and she'd had a dog, and it had had a number of issues throughout its life. And, once the dog had passed, and was gone, and she kind of went back and did the summation of stuff, she
Yeah.
came out way ahead on having pet insurance, like
Yeah. Oh,
several
I know I've
magnitudes.
got some friends that had some serious dog problems and the pet insurance literally saved them, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But then that kind of goes to like, there's a lot of people who'd be like, well, I'm just not spending that much on a dog, you know.
hmm
But like we said earlier, dogs are more in the house, more in the bed, more on the couch. They're more family members now. So
hmm Well, and
I
you look at the cost of acquiring a well-bred hunting dog puppy.
now it's two to
And,
three
and
thousand dollars
yeah,
minimum.
and the time and the effort and so the dog here now, they're 4 or 5 years old. They are hitting their prime in the grouse woods.
Right.
Dollars and cents. What have you got into that dog?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. Well, Scott, listen, I will let you go. I think we covered a little bit. We gave our RGS speech a little bit, and
Yep.
I'm glad you guys are doing what you're doing. Um, I know I got to see Blake last year, Blake and Toshi out in North
Yep.
Dakota. And
hmm
do you head out west at all? Do you go anywhere? Or are you too?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll spend this year. I'm going to spend at least a week, if not 10 days, out west. Um, and
Is
then
this
I'll
after,
probably
is this
I'll go
after your
back.
associate comes back?
What's that?
Is this after your associate comes back?
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's supposed to be back in August.
Good.
Uh, with my time off, my time off I would normally take, and then deducting the extra days I've worked while she was off. Starting about mid-August, I'm
Uh-huh.
working 2 days a week the rest of the year. So,
Nice, nice.
except for
So
when I'm out west, and then I'm not working at all.
there's light at the end of the tunnel a little bit.
It's getting there. But oh, one more thing I forgot to put a plug in for Jim
Yeah.
Foot chapter, September 13th, Gladwin Field Trial Grounds. We are
Right.
do we're doing season kickoff. Start. I don't we don't have our flyer together yet. I think we're planning on starting registration at like 8 or something like that. I'm going to speak, probably do like a Q&A kind of a thing, send out for questions, see what people want to hear the most about and talk on stuff. We're going to have a panel from DNR that's going to kind of talk about what they're doing with habitat and how they make decisions and how all that stuff is coming into play. We're going to have a couple other speakers. I know RGS is going to kind of talk about what the habitat projects they've got going on. So we'll do speakers most of the morning. And then in the afternoon, we're going to kind of have a breakout, have some small groups, have opportunities for people to come in, talk about, what they're doing either with their
Yeah.
business or their organization, eat some food, have some raffles.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it's a great. I went to the first one I ever went to was over in Wisconsin, and that was kind of more set up for new grouse hunters, but it was the same kind of thing. They took them on walks in the woods. They
yep.
showed them what the habitat looked like, and it showed you what it kind of shows you what the community looks like.
hmm
And so, like, if you're new to grouse hunting, that's a great thing to attend to because you're gonna at least feel like you've got a little command of the language a little bit. And you can
hmm
ask all the newbie questions you want. There's experts, like I said, experts on the habitat, what it looks like, veterinary care. Um, because fortunately, there's still people wanting to do this, and there's
hmm
new people wanting to do this. And that event at the Gladwin Field Trial Grounds is you're in the heart of grouse country there, and you're seeing what it looks like, and you're hearing the stories, and you're having some fun. It's kind of like why we do all this, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all in
Yeah.
one little spot. Yeah.
hmm
So I encourage people to look it up, the Jim Foot chapter, and if they were looking up, just look up Jim Foot chapter RGS, right? That'd be the way.
Yep. Yep. You look it up. We've got a Facebook page. Everything will be posted on there. If you're an RGS member, and if you're not, you should be.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
you should be getting emails and mailings on this. Um, so that's definitely a thing. And I've been impressed because at our Birds and Brews, we're starting to see a lot of people from maybe not all the way downstate, but like we had people from Mount Pleasant area, Sanford, Auburn, kind
Yeah.
of the central part of that are coming up. That's like, hey, I've not really been involved in RGS, but I come up here during hunting season. This is where I hunt. We want to
Right.
come up and be involved in your chapter.
Right. That's
Which is,
and that's what we're asking people to do. It's a little bit of advocacy. You're like you're jumping in with both feet, not just for a weekend to go try to get.
Mhm.
I know you get the dog, you're excited. I want to find but there's way more than just having the dog and excited to find a grouse or a woodcock.
Yeah.
There's so much more that goes into back, and that's where RGS and the DNR. That's why people come to Michigan. So
Absolutely.
I mean, I mean, there's a few places you can go to like this, but there's only a few. And
Hmm.
we're one of them. Other
Yeah.
than that 3 million acres of ice storm damage.
Yeah. Which is
Which,
going to be great for the birds long term.
yeah, not great for us and our dogs, but
No.
overall, it's going to make some sweet habitat.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, Scott, I really appreciate coming on. I'm glad we got to do this. I think we've covered everything we can think of, but
Yeah.
hopefully I'm sure I will see you again soon. And
Yep.
where is your first trip, real quick? Where you go this year, out of state?
Yeah. Yeah. One of those Western states.
One of them out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
west of the Mississippi.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'll see you out there.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Scott.
Have a good night.
You too.